Despite all our advancements, our comfortable homes, modern medicine, and complex social structures, human existence carries a heavy, unspoken burden. We are all moving, generation after generation, towards an absolute inevitability. The human ego operates much like a heavy cart dragging through wet mud. It binds our entire sense of identity to temporary things, our bodies, our possessions, our status, making the journey through time exhausted and weighted down by the fear of losing it all. But if the dissolution of the physical body is a natural cosmic process, predictable and universal, why is the human mind uniquely wired to be so terrified of it? Modern evolutionary psychology diagnoses this dread simply as biological self-preservation, an instinct keeping the organism alive. The ancient Upanishads, however, offer a different diagnosis, avidya, or a spiritual ignorance. According to this view, our paralyzing dread stems from a mistaken identity. Believing we are exclusively this temporary physical form causes the mind to panic at the prospect of its own erasure. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad contains an ancient creation narrative about the first conscious entity waking in the cosmos. Finding itself alone, it felt terror. But a profound realization strikes. Since nothing else exists, there is nothing to fear. The fear dissolves. This brings us to the translation of the text at the top of this page and a core philosophical thesis. Dvitīyād Vai Bhayaṁ Bhavati. One is, after all, afraid of another. Fear requires a second entity. It requires an other to exist. We can apply this directly to the human condition. As long as we perceive ourselves as isolated, separate fragments, wandering through a vast and hostile universe, death will always look like an external other coming to destroy us. Duality, the persistent illusion that there is a strict separation between the observer and the surrounding universe, is the hidden pathogen. It is the structural flaw in our perception that generates all psychological fear. The Katha Upanishad notes that the fear of it makes the fire burn and the sun shine. Further down, the text describes ultimate reality as a raised thunderbolt, projecting a raw power that forces the elements, including death, to run in obedience. Adi Shankaracharya's commentary reveals that this thunderbolt represents ultimate, unbreakable cosmic order. The fire and sun run not because they are being threatened, but because they are perfectly synchronized with a higher law. This universal discipline provides the predictable, frictionless harmony that governs everything in reality, from the immense gravitational orbits of planets down to the precise functioning of cellular biology. When we align our erratic, anxious individual minds with this flawless cosmic order, the internal friction that generates our existential dread naturally dissipates. Achieving this alignment requires a precise psychological mechanism. It relies on Ātman, or self-knowledge, which is cultivated through the ancient meditative tool known as neti, meaning not this, not this. A practitioner uses neti to systematically investigate and discard the false walls of the ego. They observe the body and the senses and the mind, and recognize that none of these changing temporary elements constitute their true identity. As this process of negation empties the mind of false identifications, it creates a psychological space for a single overriding counterthought to take root, the Brahmakara vritti, or the realization, I am Brahman. This awareness acts as a final solvent, neutralizing lingering worldly desires by replacing them with the experience of the whole. Transforming your identity in this way allows the essence to remain untouched while the form changes. As the heat of a crucible melts solid gold into a glowing liquid, the shape is lost, but the gold itself is perfectly preserved. The process of spiritual erasure merely burns away temporary illusions. It reveals the indestructible gold of the true self resting safely beneath. The ultimate state achieved at the end of this meditative process is called Abhaya. It is a state of total, absolute fearlessness. The texts describe reaching Abhaya through a very specific spiritual metaphor, breaking the Brahma Granthi. These are the stubborn knots of the heart that tightly tie our eternal consciousness to our fragile mortal biology. Traditional Vedanta outlines two distinct speeds for untying these knots. There is Krama Mukti, a gradual liberation that is finalized after the physical body dies, and Sadhyo Mukti, a profound liberation achieved instantaneously while a person is still fully alive. Laodan scholars interpret this instant liberation as a state of total psychological harmony, achieved when the ego surrenders narrow desires to the wider universal will. Liberation manifests as a psychological triumph. The mind untangles its panicked grip on the form long before biological death arrives. When we bring these philosophical concepts back into the physical world, we see what an unburdened life actually looks like. It is a grounded, daily existence where the shadow of that secret sorrow has been permanently lifted. The enlightened mind learns to let go of its physical attachments easily, experiencing no pain in the separation from what it no longer needs. The true self is comparable to the open sky. The changing weather of physical experiences, pain, and passing time move through it constantly, but the sky itself remains completely unaltered and unharmed. When duality is finally erased, the illusion breaks. We realize our frightened ego was just a reflection rippling on the surface of the water, while our true identity is the untouchable moon shining above. The Upanishads do not ask us to fight or conquer death. They ask us to discover that part of ourselves which death can never touch.